Hi, everyone. It's Steve Politi from NJ Advanced Media. This week's Rutgers Rant is brought to you by the New Brunswick Development Corporation. A big thank you to our sponsor and to all of our listeners for the continued support. Now let's get to the show.
From NJ.com and the Star Ledger, welcome to the Rutgers Rant, your one-stop podcast for the Scarlet Knights. With your host, Steve Politi, and Rutgers insiders Keith Sargent and James Cratch. Let's start shopping.
Hello, everybody. Steve Politi from NJ Advanced Media. Welcome back to the Rant. Got Sargent Cratch with me as always. And fellas, I promised to our Rutgers insider folks that we would not spend a lot of time talking about what happened in Piscataway on Saturday. It wasn't pretty. Rutgers down 45-6 to Ohio State at the half. And I will say this is the one observation I'll make. While I thought Ohio State was going to win the game, and I thought the Ohio State would win the game comfortably, by that I mean more than 20 points, I really didn't think that was going to happen again. And by that, I mean another one of these absolute embarrassing blowouts where the team is just totally non-competitive. And maybe that was wrong to think that way, Cratch. I mean, you talked about it in your film review. The speed and the talent gap is still so wide that, the idea that Rutgers would have been more competitive perhaps was flawed before we got there.
Yes, I think it was flawed in hindsight. And I think, the silver lining, the good news for Rutgers is, in terms of the Big Ten, Ohio State is way at the top. We're going to find out just how close or far Penn State is. Although last year we saw them be much more physically dominant than Rutgers. Talent gap looks like it's close against Michigan by a significant amount. We're going to see Wisconsin in a couple of weeks. They're not as good. So Rutgers is making progress compared to the entire Big Ten. No doubt there. But Ohio State is almost like an SEC team that happens to reside in the Big Ten. And there is still a big, Grand Canyon-sized gap between the two programs.
We talked about it, sorry, at the time, but we're watching that one play where Ohio State's second-best receiver takes a little pass at the 28-yard line. This, of course, my second best, I mean, he'll be the second one chosen in the first round of the NFL draft. And he rounds the corner. You see Tyshawn Fogg is trying to catch up. It's just, he's 3 steps away, and then he's 7 steps away. And then both the cornerback and safety have a chance to get him. He just runs right around into the end zone. And they're like, okay, well, look, there's no scheming that. They're just not fast enough or good enough.
I'm going to give Bobby Darren, our buddy from the 247 Sports site, credit.
Free plug, yeah.
Because he pointed this out while we were just waiting around for interviews after the game. The Ohio State guy who was relaying signals, he was holding up like a big giant poster on the sideline, with the plays, relaying, the play calls to the offense. The player who was doing that had 27 scholarship offers coming out of and he's now holding up a poster board with the plays. And now, again, Bobby Darren gets full credit for it because he actually looked up the research on that. But that just tells you what the gap, the gulf between the two programs. I mean, Ohio State has some dudes, as Crash wrote in his game story, and Rutgers just doesn't have the players to match up at this point.
All right, the good news, obviously, is now they're through the 2 hardest games. I believe still to be the 2 hardest games on the schedule. Penn State might prove me wrong. And now, Cratch, we're entering the 5 games, I think, that are going to make or break this season. And all winnable, all should be competitive. That doesn't mean they're going to win them all, certainly. But you win 3 of them, and you're in a bowl game, right? You've accomplished that before the end of October. I mean, break this down for us now. If you're a Rutgers fan, what's the most likely win out of this group, and what's the one game you think is the most concerning?
Wow, that's really tough. So I would say I think Rutgers fans should feel pretty good about the Michigan State game. I just think it's a situation where Michigan State's now ranked 11th in the country. I know they've looked good, but I just have a hard time believing they're one of the 11 best teams in America. They might be due for a slip up. Rutgers beat them last year. Obviously, Rutgers needs to kind of, they're going to have motivation to break their 2-game losing streak. Northwestern, I think, is the game that you look at the schedule right now and you think this is the gimme win. They just lost 56-7 at Nebraska the other week. But it's like Northwestern runs the ball well and they don't commit penalties, and they're kind of like Rutgers. They can go win ugly. It's a tough place to win. The Illinois, I know Illinois has, almost lost to Charlotte. They lost to UTSA, but they've been very competitive in all three of their Big Ten games, and they just had a running back go for 257 yards the other day. And we all know that run defense is Rutgers, one of their Achilles heels, especially when they play the Illini. And then you go to the home, they come home from Wisconsin. Wisconsin's a dumpster fire right now, but they're still, they still should have a talent advantage over Rutgers. I don't know how big it's going to be. And in Indiana, I think, is really just the toughest team to figure out. They struggled this year. They surged last year. That's on the road. They're still a good team. So I look at it, yes, Rutgers should be able to go 3-2, get to a bowl game before they even go to Penn State. Very possible. But I don't think it's anything close to a given.
Sarge, does what happened against Ohio State change your opinion going into the stretch at all?
No. I think Cratchit, I think there's 3 more wins on this schedule. I think 6, and 6 or even 7 and 5 is still certainly possible.
Which one of those games do you think? I mean, I look at Northwestern and you say that, well, that's got to be the one. If you get steamrolled by Nebraska, you're just not very good. I think Michigan State, I mean, just looking at who they played yet, they're not, obviously I agree with Crash, not as good as the top 11 team, but they're certainly better than they were last year when Rutgers won that game with 7 turnovers. Which one are you looking at, Sarge?
Yeah, Northwestern, Illinois, and then probably Maryland are 3 certainly winnable games. Maryland at the end of the year. It's interesting. They're 3-2, and they're exactly what we, most of us, including us, I think, figured that they'd be at this point. You've said, and I kind of agree with it, that I think at some point they're going to win a game that they're not supposed to. Maybe it's this week against Michigan State, and they're going to lose a game that they're not supposed to. Maybe it's in Illinois or Northwestern if they're favored in that game. So, it's just the way it happens in college football. Sometimes it balances out. I still think, like I said, I think there's 3 wins on the schedule at least.
I think it's interesting. I'd be interested to see what happens. The crowd was very good against Ohio State. A lot of problems getting into the building, which is just something they've just got to fix. I mean, I arrived late at the game. My son had a hockey game. I wanted to see it. And it's just amazing the number of people stuck at the gates trying to get into this place. I don't know if that's an issue with everyone getting there at the last minute, if it's an issue with the electronic tickets, if it's just, it's just a Rutgers screw thing. I really don't know. But clearly, getting people in the building is a problem. That said, you would think that if the crowd was that good for Ohio State, you would have a similar level of crowd, Cratch, and that would give the team a boost. We haven't seen that yet in a couple of years, but it really was a big time college football atmosphere.
No doubt. And very quickly, I think there's a very simple way to fix the crowd issue. Are you guys ready for this?
Yeah, we're sure we're going to hire you and give you a $175,000 job at Rutgers if you can do this. Come on.
Okay.
Solve it.
They just open the stadium earlier.
People going to go in earlier?
We're going to tailgate. People are going to.
No. But yes, but here's the thing too. I don't think they open the stadium until an hour and a half before kickoff, which is silly because and people obviously if you text us at NJ.com, if I'm wrong, when the Scarlet Walk is over, they should open all the gates because there's a lot of people there who probably would just go in. I know everyone says tailgating, but I also think you have a glut where if you open things earlier, some people are going to trickle and that's going to reduce the flow. That's just my one thing. Just let people in the stadium. If people want to go there and sit in their seat 2.5 hours for kickoff and watch guys field punts, so be it.
The problem is the scanners, and I've talked to some people about it. It's basically, they have the tickets on the phones. If you have multiple tickets, you have to scan through them. It takes time. The scanners aren't working. I know for the first game, the scan count, which I always open for, was woefully off. I mean, we couldn't even use it. A couple of years ago, I opened for the same numbers in basketball. This isn't a new thing. Basketball, at the rack has historically been the same way. 2 years ago, where our own eyes saw that they were were well over 7,000 as far as Big Ten games. It was showing it was 3,000 people were walking in the buildings. Well, why? Well, because once the scanners go, they just wave them through, and they just basically. You have no way of knowing exactly how many people are in your building. So it's the scanners, and they have went through a new ticket system, no more paper. It's just probably going to take time and people getting used to it.
Oh, geez, take time. I mean, I don't. It's kind of small time if they can't figure that out. I really that
yeah, I mean, is it the scanners? I mean, like, are we using the original model scanner from 1999?
Yeah, Tandy Radio Shack model.
Or is it possibly the people holding the scanners?
Oh well, that's it. I mean, that could be it too, for sure. Absolutely.
All right, let's dive into true or false, guys. We're going to cover some issues from the game, some issues coming up, rest of the season. You know the rules. Here we go. All right, true or false? The fake punt in the first quarter against Ohio State, good idea, poorly executed. Cratch, true or false?
True.
Sarge?
True.
No, well, I'm going false, capital F. We'll talk about that in a minute. True or false? Rutgers will beat Ohio State in the next 10 years. Cratch, true or false?
False.
Sarge?
False.
Yeah, it's painful to say, but until they prove otherwise, I go false as well. True or false? Rutgers will win 3 of its next 5 games. Cratch?
False.
Sarge?
3 of the next 5.
You got Michigan State, Northwestern.
I know. So you're not counting Maryland. False.
False. Okay, I'm going to go false as well for now. We'll talk about that. True or false? Rutgers fans should storm the field if they beat Michigan State. Cratch.
Absolutely, 100% yes.
Wow. Okay. True.
I never have a problem. I don't want to be the old guy, and the second guy sounding like an old guy. I've never have a problem with they storm the field. Storm the field after you beat Delaware. I don't care.
Okay, so that's true for you. I'll say true. Why not? It'd be fun. Get some action in the field. All right, true or false? Do not overreact to the Bo Melton injury. If he can't play this week, he is replaceable. Cratch, true or false?
False.
Sarge?
False. He's far and away the best playmaker.
I'm gonna say true. We'll talk about this in a minute. All right. True or false? Cole Snyder looked like QB1 2022 in the fourth quarter against Ohio State. Cratch, how do you think Cole Snyder looked? True or false?
He looked good, but that's false.
Sarge?
He did look good. False.
False. Okay, I'll add another false to that. I'd love to see more of them. True or false? The Ohio State loss will damage recruiting. A lot of players there watching this game. True or false?
False.
Sarge?
If you have a choice between Ohio State and Rutgers, you probably, hate to say it, Rutgers fans, this is not an indictment on Rutgers, but if you have a choice between Ohio State and Rutgers, you're probably choosing Ohio State. False. False.
All right. Well, it hasn't, I have to say true because hasn't it already impacted recruiting? Omari Evans decided to go to Penn State on Saturday. It was already going to happen. Is that what you?
Yeah, I think that was. Someone had told me he was probably going there before the ball was in the cards. Kicked off. I mean, Here's the thing, like Greg Schiano and his staff think about all these things, I'm sure, and they had to know prior to planning this big shindig that there was a reasonable chance they were going to get their doors blown off, and they still did it. I think the bigger issue when we go back to 78-0 in recruiting was 78-0. I mean, my goodness. But 2, that was like a horrible crowd, like a box. Weren't they trying to stripe the birthplace or something? And it was all botched. This is a great crowd on Saturday. So they got that part going.
Right. Yeah. And I guess it doesn't matter if you're going to go to Penn State and you go to the whiteout game and you see that crowd. It's always going to be better than right now what Rutgers can replicate. So I mean, it's hard to top that. I just don't. I guess it depends on what kind of recruits you're looking at. You're absolutely right, Craig. Sarge, if you have a choice between Rutgers and Ohio State, you're probably going to pick Ohio State. If you're a recruit there that has a choice between Rutgers and Indiana, well, that might be pretty good. That might be a pretty good crowd comparatively speaking to some of the other teams.
The other thing, too, is, some of these guys might watch it and then think to themselves, well, if I come to Rutgers, like, I can be the difference that gets them to playing with Ohio State. I think that's a factor, too.
Right. All right, let's talk about Bo Melton. First, do you feel like this is a lot? I know they're not giving any information about injuries. We're just really guessing. He walked off. You could see his arm was drooping, Sarge. He's coming off. Do you think this is a long-term injury? Is this a season thing, a 2-3 week thing? What are we looking at?
I don't want to speculate on season, long term, depending. I don't think he'll play this week, just based on just the eye test and just based on, I mean, I can't paint the picture any more than other than the fact that the way you normally run, your two arms are running side by side, but your arms bent. His right arm was just dangling, like drooping while he was running back to the locker room. So you clearly saw that he was in street clothes. I don't know. I don't expect him to play Michigan State. Long term beyond that, I don't really want to speculate just yet.
Why do you think this is devastating, Cratchy? You've got Cruikshank has proved to be a big play guy. I mean, you've got depth at that position. Finally, we had the much ballyhooed arrival late in that game of the Kansas State transfer. What do you think?
Just because I think Bo's the one guy who, like, opposing defensive coordinators. I mean, in Rutgers there's other guys, but teams have to take him out of the game. He frees things up elsewhere in the offense. He's a guy that keeps people up at night. Whereas you take him out of the equation, now that it's going to Cruikshank, it's going, you're going to have to ask guys like Isaiah Washington, Brandon Sanders, the young blood potentially to play much more snaps, much bigger spots than they have been playing. Bo is a run threat. He's a special teams threat as a return guy. It's just a big loss all around. And I don't think if he's out for a good amount of time, you're going to say, okay, season's over, pack it up. But I think it's going to definitely complicate things for an offense that, is not terribly, high flying as it is.
Fake punt. Here's my argument. I wrote about it. I don't mind the idea of the fake punt. I just don't like the timing of it. And I get Greg Schiano accurately knew that he would have to take chances to beat Ohio State. You hadn't played, your offense moved the ball pretty well. You hadn't played but 3 minutes in the game at that point. You didn't see what your defense was going to do. You've got the best punter in the country. I don't know. I still think in that situation, you pin them back. You hope your defense can rise to the occasion, and maybe it's a different game. Instead, you give them the ball on your side of the field. They score immediately and off to the races. Tell me why that's wrong.
I think they were moving the ball really well. Isaiah Pacheco had that drop on that swing pass on third down. If he catches it, he probably at least gets some yardage, and they go for it on fourth down. I think, look, they wanted to keep the drive going. They were having success against the Buckeyes. I thought the play design was fine. It was a well drawn up play. Matt Alaimo is your traditional up back. So if you suddenly put Cole Snyder in at the up back, Ohio State's going to know something's coming. So I think putting him there was fine. The throw wasn't great, but then again, even the throw was better. I think there was cover. I mean, it just didn't work. It was worth trying. But here's the thing: they could have punted and had Korsak pin Ohio State on the one. Ohio State, with the Buckeyes, were still going to score.
Right.
Henderson's touchdown run would have been like 70 yards long instead of 44. So,
fair point. All right, and finally, we all said false to Rutgers will win three of the next 5 games. I guess that's a little surprising. I think they should be underdogs in 4 of them. Would you say? I think that's a fair estimate. I've said from the beginning I think they're going to win one game that they aren't expected to win and lose one game they aren't expected to lose. That could happen in the next 5. If they beat a team like Wisconsin, I don't care how bad Wisconsin looks right now. That to me is an unexpected victory. Whereas they could go to Northwestern and lose that game easily. I mean that's the thing with the Big Ten. There's none of these are true gimmies, Cratch. I guess if you look at it that way.
Exactly. Look, the way I look at it, I guess I'll spoil our pick. I think they're going to beat Michigan State on Saturday.
Ooh.
I do. I think they're going to split the 2 trips to Illinois. I would say that the Illini are likely the tougher opponent they're going to face, but Northwestern is built. They just win weird 18-16 games at that place. That just, to me, seems like it could be like a total rock fight, similar to the Syracuse game that just goes the other way. And then, look, Wisconsin, I hand up. I really screwed. There are some things I got right about the Big Ten preseason. I was on the Michigan bandwagon from the start. Got that. I was way wrong about Wisconsin. Yeah. I thought they might win the Big Ten. They are a disaster. Wow. And honestly, they're a disaster to the point where you start to wonder, is this not just a one-off? Is this sort of like the end of the Wisconsin run that we're starting to see, that, no, you can't just get a bunch of, unheralded, fat guys from Wisconsin and New Jersey running backs and just have it work in perpetuity. So I think Indiana is just a tough match. So, I will say right now they're 2-3.
Hey, Rutgers Rant listeners, it's Steve Politi from NJ Advance Media. We appreciate you supporting this podcast and the sponsors who help us continue doing it. This week's podcast is brought to you by the New Brunswick Development Corporation. If you listen to this show, you love Rutgers. And if you love Rutgers, you know the positive impact that DevCo has made on the campus and its community. We thank the New Brunswick Development Corporation for its continued support and for helping make this podcast possible. Now back to the show.
In the next 5, they could be 3-2, get to a bowl game, but I'll stick with 2 and 3 just because I think Wisconsin has, I still think Wisconsin is a somewhat decent team that's had a bad run. And I think the Indiana matchup is going to be really tough. And I think Indiana can score points. I think that's the biggest issue Rutgers has going into this next 5 games is they need to score 35, 40 points to beat Indiana probably. And I just don't know if they can do that.
All right, good job, guys. Enjoyed it as always. Let's dive into our Rutgers Insider questions. As always, thank you for subscribing. You guys had some good ones this week, and several people asked for our reviews of the Many Saints of Newark. I had not yet seen it, so perhaps we should make that our homework this week, guys, and come back with a good Sopranos movie review. That would be fun. Have you seen it yet? Either one of you?
I've not.
No?
I have not, no.
All right. Well, we're working on it this week. I promise we'll get back to that one. All right. First one, Rutgers is averaging 14.3 points a game against Power 5 opponents. If they score under 20 in each of the next 3 games, is it fair to say that Sean Gleason is not the offensive mastermind we were told he was? Thank you, Chris from Toronto, our international listeners coming through again. What do you make of that? That is 2 touchdowns a game. It is probably less than we expected. Do they need to have a big performance here to sort of justify our $1 million offensive coordinator?
That's a good question by Chris. Chris in Toronto always has very good questions. I don't think you can kind of go too deep on blasting Gleason. I think it's last year probably was a little bit of lightning in a bottle, now that we're looking at it. The pieces Rutgers has on offense, if you look at them case by case, they're not terribly imposing or threatening. So this might just be kind of a regression to the mean. And I think that, Gleason's a guy who clearly has figured out ways to, first off, we have to remember what Rutgers offense was before Sean Gleason arrived. He's clearly figured out creative ways to make them more productive, to move the football, to have a pulse. I think Vedral threw for 150 yards on Saturday. I was thinking if this was 3 years ago, it would have been 2 yards passing in that game. That being said, I get where people are coming from. They need to score more points, but I really think that we are not going to know the true value or stature or how the ceiling for Sean Gleason in a Rutgers offense until he's got Gavin Wimsatt playing.
Yeah, that said, and I wrote this in my column, I'd love to see them line up and play these next 5 opponents and move the ball like a Big Ten offense should, Sarge. And I got heat from fans again for got the emails where, oh, come on, Politi, it's your 4th game of the second year. Yeah, I understand that, but this team has proven it's better than it looked. I thought it was pretty good against Michigan and moved they were okay. They were even in the line in the trenches in those games. Why not be a Big Ten offense in these next 5 games, Sarge?
Are we sure? Have you anointed the Rutgers offensive line, the offensive line that Kratch astutely points out every week in his film review, keeps on mixing and matching? Have we anointed them?
It was good against Michigan.
The second half against Michigan.
Okay.
By the way, I gotta say,
how will we know? We don't know against that team.
Hold on. Let me finish the point. Have we anointed them as this hog mollies and come on, really? We've anointed this offensive line. Again, have you read one of Kratch's film reviews on how they keep on mixing and matching? They don't have a solid 5 offensive linemen, and Greg Schiano still every press conference talks about how they're it's still the biggest concern that he has, and each week. Have we anointed them as this offensive line that's going to be able to be like Kratch said, like the Wisconsin of old, just going out and pounding these teams? We've anointed them as being able to just impose their will and make Rutgers play Big Ten smash mouth football.
Kratch?
No,
you don't have.
Yeah.
It's like how
yes
I
and no.
just tossed that hot potato right there. I'm like, oh, that's good.
Yes and no. Look, they They have improved. They can do it sometimes. Other times they can't. They're still very hit or miss. The point I was trying to make before we let Sarge make his point, and then Politi cowardly handed off the point to me, was the fan base is just all over the place with this team. Like, they go out to Michigan, they make a couple of mistakes, they lose a close game they probably should have won. People are, how dare you say Rutgers should have won? Like, look at it's participation trophies. Look how far we've come. This is the greatest thing ever. A week later, they play Ohio State, which played for the national title a couple of months ago, is clearly so far ahead of everyone in the Big Ten. They get hammered, and people are like, "This is Greg 78-0. They were unprepared. How dare this happen?" Like, what? Like, guys, you got to pick a side here. Is it all like? Is it like enjoy the journey, or is it you're ready to win now? One or the other. Like, let's find a side and go with it.
No, okay, I like that's good. That's a good rant. I like it. To your point, Sarge, no. Okay, the offensive line is not this Washington Redskins 1989 level, but I do think the offense has made tremendous strides. It's one thing if they can't move the ball against Michigan or Ohio State. I get it. I think this is just we're entering a different level of territory here where you should be able to see a competent offense these next 5 weeks. That's all I'm saying.
They are about to embark on a journey against the Big Ten's soft middle.
Yes.
The 8-4 to 4-8. It's like the NFL. Like, there's some really good teams at the top, really bad teams at the bottom, and then there's this soft. They're about to play the Big Ten teams where they're even on talent or maybe just a hair behind. And Steve's right. They should be able to kind of play straight up football against them.
All right. Next sore point from a insider. Isaiah Pacheco only got 7 touches. None of them were north-south runs. You have a power back who runs strong north-south. Why do we keep on running him to the outside? Karachi, we've talked about this a million times. I think this one we can kind of shrug off as with everything else with Ohio State. But your thoughts on where we are with the running game and Pacheco?
That's just what they do. And to their credit, it worked a little bit against Michigan and Delaware, so I can't kill them for that. But yeah, this is just the offense. They're trying to stretch the field vertically because they don't horizontally because they don't feel they can go vertically. And that was one of the things. Like, they took some deep shots early on in the game, and it was working. And then they kind of went away with it until it was 45-6, which I didn't really get. So, yeah, I mean, this is the offense. They're going to keep doing it. I feel like Isaiah Pacheco, unfortunately, is just destined to have one of these careers at Rutgers where he was really good and everyone knew he was really good, but he just never gets over the hump and has that breakout season that, people remember.
All right. Thoughts on Youngblood's role going forward? I was always confused with where he would fit in, given that Cruikshank's role. Sarge, we saw him late in the game. He looked pretty good. I mean, I guess it's against the Ohio State C-teamers, but caught a touchdown pass, was involved in the offense. I don't know. I mean, what do you think? Let's broaden it out. What is if Melton can't play, who are the go-to guys for this offense beyond Cruikshank in this game?
Yeah, it has to be Isaiah Washington. He's Brandon Sanders are the two guys, obvious. I mean, coaches don't go – there's a depth chart for a reason, and the guys who we've seen playing, Isaiah Washington, obviously Cruikshank has his role, but Isaiah Washington and Brandon Sanders are the guys who they trust more than, Youngblood or Sean Munnerlin or anyone else down below. I'd be very surprised if there's that guy who all of a sudden just comes out of nowhere. It's going to be Isaiah Washington.
We've been waiting for Washington to do this for like 2 years.
That's exactly right. I was going to say that 2 years ago, as a freshman, showed some signs. We saw him in a spring game. I know it's a spring game, but like we're waiting for him to emerge. Maybe this is his opportunity.
All right, and this is a good one. Got to cut. A lot of people are writing content for James Cratch this week. Want to know what Mel Tucker is doing with the chop. So this is the reader, Mark and Piscataway. Mel Tucker seems to have taken last year's loss very personal for a head coach, coming out in recent days, parroting the chop mantra, etc. on social media. Any idea what his issue is with the loss last year in Rutgers in general? So Kratz, do you want to give a sneak preview as to your deep investigative reporting on what's going on with Michigan State and the chop?
Yes, I did dig deep. It will be on NJ.com. We're taping this Monday morning. It should be up Monday afternoon. I'm just waiting to talk to the big guy about the thoughts of the keep chopping, gimmick infringement. Yeah, actually, we are going to talk, Look, so one thing I will say this. Mel Tucker, we have evidence through our investigation. Like, he didn't just take this from Rutgers like last fall. Like, he has used the term before. He used it last season. He used it when he was at Colorado. It probably dates back. I know for a fact it almost assuredly dates back even further. That being said, it's something that he really seems to have picked up. Like, he's trying to make it a thing somewhat abruptly. If I am correct, he did not tweet the words "keep chopping" until like September 5th of this year. Right. It's strange. It's kind of peculiar to me just because I was talking to some people at Michigan State. He has like a whole like laundry list of like football guy terms and cliches that he like. That's literally like, apparently his press conferences, they're just like cliche transition. So he's chosen this one for some reason. And look, it's a really good mantra. I mean, as far as
but at least PJ Fleck came up with.
Yeah, I was going to say.
He went to row the boat. I mean,
yeah, at least
there's other things you can. I mean,
other
wax
things you
the
can
weeds,
do.
Mow the lawn. There's got to be something you.
So my personal opinion takeaway is that I think he's just trolling Rutgers. I think for whatever reason he got hired, roughly at the same time as Greg. He probably looked at the Big Ten. Michigan's obviously his rival. Penn, you got to start somewhere, and I guess he he came into New Jersey and recruited the state hard. That was a thing. Yeah, I mean it's good. Like, I know Rutgers fans are irritated. I know that I think the program is kind of bemused at why he's doing this and also irritated. But this is good. At the end of the day, this is great for the Big Ten. It's great for Rutgers. It's great for Michigan State. Rutgers is in the Big Ten. They're competing. They need to start having healthy hatred with their brethren. And I don't know how to call this a rivalry yet, but there's some heat to this game. And that's really good and fun for all involved. With that being said, I really don't understand what Mel Tucker's doing except really pissing off the Scarlet Knights ahead of one of the biggest games of the year for both sides.
So it's funny because you're talking about investigations. Well, Politi did the initial investigation on the chop, and he went back and talked to the guy who instilled it with Greg Schiano, and which, I mean, it's funny. We're Rutgers fans, listen to this pod or listen to the Woodward and Bernstein of investigative reporters who dig deep on the chop and the origin of the chop, and Steve Politi and James Kratz. But going back, I mean, Greg, technically, if you really want to be technical, like, didn't the Jacksonville Jaguars do it first? Didn't Jack Del Rio, and it wasn't like a disaster? So
yeah, I think a kicker chopped off his leg or something. I might be getting the details wrong.
Put an axe to his leg.
Something bad happened. I know that. Yeah,
and that was a little bit before the Illinois game where the chop, the origin 2005 Illinois game. So look, it's a copycat business, and I think coaches are always looking to. But it's great. It's a great storyline. We're gonna use it anyway.
I think we should commission a study of what acceptable. Come up with like a list of acceptable new ways of saying keep chopping. Like, I was thinking maybe trim the hedge would be a good one. Mow the lawn. Come on, what do you got here? I mean, we already have row the boat.
Pull the weeds.
Pull the weeds. I love it. You're in the garden. Okay, you're in the garden. You're facing a lot of weeds. All you got to do is you get to pull the first one, pull the next one. That's a good one. I like it. Pull the weeds.
Cut the fat. Cut the fat.
Trim. You got to trim the fat, man. You got a big steak out there. You're waiting for it. So you got to just get one piece at a time. Trim the fat. All right. I like it. We're going to work on that, guys.
Hem the pants. Hem the pants.
Yeah. Hem the pants. Maybe. Yeah, there's something there. It's good. It works. You can do a little sewing motion with your hand instead of chopping.
You call your stadium like the pants party, and like people have like, Steve Carell and Anchorman like signs.
Good. This Illinois is going to be using that, right? You watch. All right. A couple more questions. Here's one. And this will segue great into the preview. is Michigan State a legitimate 11, or have they benefited by beating some overrated teams, Miami and Indiana? Not that they're not good, but 11 seems a tad dramatic for their resume. Kratz, you hinted at it a little bit. You don't think they're quite at that level, but certainly they're better than they were last year. I mean, what's going on in East Lansing?
Yeah, no, I don't think that they're quite there at that level. I can't remember off the top of my head. I don't have them ranked 11th. I think I have them ranked like 14th or 15th, somewhere in there. No, I definitely think that they're benefiting from that. And that's just the thing, like in the Big Ten. I mean, Iowa's ranked ahead of Penn State in the poll. I mean, obviously it's one spot and they're going to play this weekend, but Iowa hammered Indiana and Iowa State, who have proven that they're not very good, whereas obviously Penn State beat Indiana as well, but they beat Auburn, who just beat LSU in Death Valley. So I definitely think that Michigan State is overranked at 11. I think they're really good, but I don't think that it kind of goes back to basketball a couple years ago when they beat Ohio State when they were ranked like 18th in the country. Like, you were at the rack that night. You walked away thinking, A, great win for Steve Pikiell and Rutgers. B, there's no way Ohio State is one of the 18 best teams in America. I think we're going to have a similar thing on this Saturday if Rutgers wins. Tremendous win for the Scarlet Knights, but that's not one of the 11 best teams in the country.
All right, let's dive into predictions then. You hinted at it, Kratz. Do you want to go first? Do you think they're going to win this game?
I do. I think Rutgers is going to win this game. I will say 24-21. And I think that Valentino Ambrosio, who very quietly has not been terribly strong in the big spot, kicks the field goal to win the game, sends Rutgers to its first win over a ranked opponent since 2009.
Wow.
And yes, the fans should storm the field because given everything that's going on at Rutgers, given, everything this program has been through, I don't care if it's number 11. I don't care if Michigan State's a little overrated. Enjoy the moment. Rush the field. Have something. There's a first kind of signature moment of Shiano 2.0.
I agree with you on that part of it. The line was 6. Michigan State -6. Sarge, you surprised at that number? And who are you picking?
I think Michigan State wins it. It'll be a rock fight. Oh, it's going to be a rock fight. 21-20.
Wow. Okay. So close game. You're gonna take the points then, and the Michigan State win. I'm going the other direction again, mostly now to catch up because I'm on a losing streak here. I think it's gonna be a closer game too than before. I just the 7 turnover thing from last year. This is gonna be hard to replicate. I've seen some things I haven't liked. I'm still not sure about. I mean, again, I think they have personnel to make up for Bo Melton, but maybe not enough. Defense hasn't been great. I think it's gonna be like a 31-24 Michigan State win. So I'm going to lay the 6 points and try to make a comeback. All right. What else are we going to need to talk about? Anything else going on campus? Sarge, you're making a trip this week. Where are you going? Tell our listeners.
Going to my second home, my winter vacation, my fall vacation, my summer vacation, Indianapolis has become. And it's not just to visit Kevin Fine, which I'm sure he's gonna welcome me with open arms, but it's to cover Big Ten Basketball Media Day, both men's and women's basketball media day. So we'll get a chance to preview those 2 teams starting on.
Interesting. All right. Anything else going on campus, Kratz? We had some field hockey results, not a good one, but still against a top-ranked team.
Yeah, field hockey, a tough loss to Iowa, bounce back. I think they beat Indiana. Soccer is rolling along. I think women's soccer's won 5 straight. So, this is it's kind of a strange thing to say for Rutgers, but this is all about getting to the postseason, getting to the Big Ten tournament, and seeing what those teams can do there.
It's interesting. A reader pointed out that the Rutgers women's soccer team has never lost to Ohio State. So in an alternate universe where that is the most important thing, Rutgers has the upper hand over the Buckeyes.
Well, go back to that. You think Ohio State beats Rutgers in the next decade? Remember the football question? What do you think? Rutgers women's soccer play?
Soccer. I just don't. I forget it. There's no chance that that's good. No way. They're just not recruiting the same level as Rutgers women's soccer. It's been proven. They're a juggernaut. Come on. There's no way. Soccer. All right. That's all I got. You guys got anything else before we sign off?
No.
I mean, field hockey. They played Iowa, number 1 team in the country. I mean, again, you go back to what Crash said. That we're at this point. One of those teams I think has a good chance to win the first Big Ten title. Whether it's women's soccer, probably is a favorite, but field hockey has an opportunity as well.
All right. On that note, all of you out there, just pull those weeds. We're ready for next week. We'll be back here to recap the Michigan State game. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to the Rutgers Rant. To participate in the conversation and receive live updates about the Scarlet Knights directly to your phone, sign up at NJ.com/insider.
You haven't heard enough from me yet, huh? Steve Politti here for one last thank you to this episode's sponsor, New Brunswick Development Corporation, and to listeners like you who make it all the way to the end of the show. We'll see you again soon.